Prue Gonzalez, here with the wonderful Lachlan Kalache. And thank you very much for coming along today. Today we're going to be talking about podcasting. And we'll talk about some different ways we can use podcasts. We'll also talk about how we use them currently, how we might like to think about using them in our classes moving forward. And we'll look at different ways that we can use a whole range of different podcasting tools that might be out there. But I think maybe we ask everyone, Lachlan, what podcasting means to them. What do you think? We'll start off with a nice broad question to get everyone warmed up and thinking about podcasting.
That sounds eminently sensible. I will just drop a link into the chat pod for everybody. If you want to click on that Mentimeter link, it's going to open up a short little activity that just asks you to put in a word, or 3 words in this case, for what podcasting means to you. So if you just want to fill that out and submit it for us, it will obviously help us with where the discussion goes from here. I'll put the link in again. But yeah, we're just having a look at the moment at what podcasting means to people individually. And we're happy to keep dropping in, obviously, the slides and cheat sheets and other bits and pieces that we use along the way. Some people like to just read those and take off. Other people will obviously stay for the presentation, but you're more than welcome to engage with those as you see fit. So one more time, I'll drop that link for the Mentimeter activity into the chat pod for those of you that haven't had a chance, and then we'll bring up the results. Okay, so I can see people's responses are going into the word cloud at the moment about what podcasting means to you. It's important that we kind of get this, air this a little bit, get it on the table, so to speak, because the term itself is somewhat contentious and it's used by different people in different ways. And we're going to unpack that a bit. But as you can see, some of the responses that we've got in here, the more obvious ones, it refers to audio. Okay, there's a good start. Some people, it's a recording, short recordings. It involves presenting in some way, that it's downloadable, that it's accessible. The convenience factor, thought-provoking, all that kind of stuff, that it's online, that it's voice. All of this stuff is absolutely bang on the money. And I can see down here 10 people have dropped those in. So thank you very much. We will use that to launch into, I guess, a discussion around the term itself, podcasting. So the definition for the term podcasting, technically, it refers to play on demand. That's where the pod comes from. And it's referring really to the idea that that people will subscribe to a service. That's the demand aspect. And I'll keep dropping these into the chat pod for people that might not have them yet. So a subscription of sorts, or a demand for a service. And originally the term really applied to audio only. Okay, so you can see here in the subtext underneath, we've put here, podcasting, you mean sound grabs, right? And this is the type of conversation that we quite often have with different teachers. Everyone seems to have a different term that they might use. And in some cases, people will refer to it simply as they think that podcasting actually is just audio in any form. Oh, I want some podcasts in my subject site. And they're not talking about creating an online subscription based sort of series of episodes or anything like that. They're literally just talking about embedding audio into their subject site. But they associate the term podcast with that as well. And we're not saying that any of these is particularly wrong, but what we're getting at really is that originally the term referred to the idea of a subscription service. So people would create audio, create episodes of audio that people could subscribe to, and that they would people would be able to listen to those when it was convenient to them. So in that word cloud we looked at before, the term convenience was dropped in there over here, and that's absolutely where the term podcasting was, I guess, conceptualized, in that idea that we're going to someone would record audio at one point in time, but that people would grab it when it was convenient to them. So really what we're, as I said, we're talking about this idea that people might create a series of audio recordings and that they would find a way to distribute those to audience members. Okay, and in order for people to get hold of that audio, they would need to opt into some sort of subscription service. We're not necessarily talking about paid services, or definitely not talking about them in my case. But basically, the people would need some sort of mechanism to subscribe or get access to that audio. And really, what we're going to be looking at today very shortly is a number of tools that people can use, firstly, to create their audio, their podcasts, to distribute, and secondly, some tools that are more commonly used for people to get hold of podcasts. And usually my MO in this space is to find free and effective tools for us to use, and where possible, tools that are integrated with the platforms we already use. So Interact2, for example, how do our students access stuff? Well, they probably start in the subject site. So in many ways, we'll try and find tools that will work alongside our learning management system. Okay, so that's a little bit of context for where we're going with today's conversation. We'll look at a couple of exemplars. I will just unpack a few of those. Let's do that. And by all means, feel free to drop stuff into the chat pod, please, and myself and Prue will get to that. It's not behaving. Okay, let's look at some exemplars of how podcasts potentially are already being used. Here we've got a subject site. In this case, it's about digital literacy. And in this case, you can see the labeling. They've used the term podcast here. And what they have embedded inside this container is an audio file. I'll play that for a second.
Hi all, Julie Lindsay here. We're now at, module 1.1. We're just launching into this introduction to digital literacy.
Okay, I'm not going to play that in any extended fashion, but you can see the academics recorded audio as a weekly sort of launch into the content, for example, perhaps setting the scene, a little bit of background. It works alongside the text content that's there. And what we have in here, sitting behind it, she's used a tool called SoundCloud, which some of you may be familiar with. We don't look particularly in depth at SoundCloud in this talk, and that's because it's a paid service. Okay, so before people get too excited about that particular type of tool, SoundCloud requires that you pay for to create your podcasts and to distribute them. And in this case, Julie, who unfortunately she's no longer at CSU, she's working at another uni, but she loves using SoundCloud. She pays for the tool. We're going to look at another platform called Anchor FM, which is absolutely free and can be used in exactly the same way. So there's an example there of a podcast that's been created in a third-party tool, SoundCloud, and they've taken that embed and dropped it inside a content area in their subject site. That's the first example. Secondly, we're looking now at a platform called Anchor FM. That's what we're going to be looking at today, Anchor. And in this case, we have one of our law academics, Hayley McEwen from up in Port Macquarie. And Hayley likes to use Anchor to create new episodes relating to the law subjects that she's teaching. So you can see there are the topics that she's got going on there. Fiduciary obligations, I don't know what that is, but it sounds very legal. Equitable obligation of confidence, undue influence, and unconscionable something or others. Each of these are audio episodes that one person, the students, for example, could come to this website and listen to each episode. If we click on play. Okay, a bit of intro music, and then Hayley will launch into her content in Anchor. That's if it's hosted directly on the website. Again, we're going to try and show you options that students can access through the subject site. But you can see straight away that there are a number of ways through this platform for people to subscribe. So there's Spotify. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Spotify. Google Podcasts, we're going to have a look at that. Pocket Casts, we'll have a look at that as well. But there are a number of services that will allow you to capture podcasts and listen to them, and it'll be the same for your students. So we go back to preferably through the subject site if we can, but there will always be other platforms as well that they can subscribe to these. Okay, some more examples. Here we have an example of what I was talking about before with just audio, an MP3 file that has been embedded into a subject site. And this is perhaps the easiest way for people to get audio into their subjects if that's what you're looking for. If you're not looking to create online cloud-based episodes for people to subscribe to, you're not interested in that aspect of podcasting, you can take any audio file and embed it into your subject sites really easily, and it will come out looking like this with an embedded media player, potentially with a transcript file underneath, and you hit play.
This information is brought to you by Charles Sturt University.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so in that case, we've got a copyright message or a placeholder message that sits at the start. And that happens quite often when we create materials in Panopto CSU Replay. So we'll have a look at that shortly. But in this case, they're able to access it straight through the subject site. Helena, I'll get to your question in just a second. And the last example I've got here, we've got a whole bunch of text in a subject site. If we scroll down and down and down and some more down. I didn't miss it, did I? No, I didn't. We're getting there, I promise. 2/3 of the way down was my... Here we go. This is another way that people will provision audio through their subject sites. Probably the simplest is literally by dropping a link to where the audio is located into their content. Okay, so this is probably, I think it's safe to say, the least aesthetically pleasing. If you're wanting it to look sort of polished and professional, there's no embedded media player. There's literally just a hyperlink to some audio somewhere else. Okay, and this is done quite often if people aren't sure how to get audio into sites. They'll just drop a link in. So there's 4 ways there that people have provided audio to students. Okay, so the question we had, if you create content on Anchor FM, are they available to the general public? Yes, they are. The channel itself is public. They would need to be able to find your RSS feed link. So it's in the same way that YouTube has public and unlisted, Anchor works in the same way. So unless you provide someone with the RSS, the actual subscription link to your channel, they can't find it. Okay, so that's how it works. It's not... when people want to make podcasts and put them into a catalog of services and advertise for them and make money from them, they want them to be as public as possible. But the default state is until you start paying for things like that, it'll just create the audio on your own unlisted channel, which generally suits most of us just fine. Okay, I'm going to close those examples and we're going to have a look at Anchor. And by all means, keep popping in those questions. Okay. I'm going to walk through the tool first and then we'll come back to some of these teaching ideas. All right, so the platform we're going to be looking at today is anchor.fm. If you're looking for it, that's the URL for it. You can just put anchor.fm into your browser and it will bring it up. Anchor is a free platform from the outset. You can spend money on different aspects of it if you wanted to as I said, create a bigger, more public directed podcast. But you have the ability to create a channel on here with unlimited episodes, unlimited audio. And really, it's aimed at novices to podcasts. The idea is that you're going to be able to create episodes in here on your channel quickly and easily and get them out to people that are interested in listening to them with a minimum of fuss. It's not a massively... not a platform that really allows for professional editing of your audio. So if that's what you're looking for, this is probably not the tool. but it also gives you access to some basic demographic stats around when your episodes are being listened to, how often, how long, the ones that are most popular, where your listeners are coming from, how people are listening to episodes, for example. And again, there is a fine line between what you get for free, which is what we're looking at the moment, versus wanting to get more specific detail and more specific analytics. Again, they're going to start asking you to pay for a paid account. But anyway, let's look at why Anchor is so popular. I'm going to create a new episode. Let's just start with that. This is the platform for creating a new podcast episode. You can see here, it's pretty simple, big buttons. Over on the right here, it's going to show me the audio for my episode as I create it. So I'm going to just get straight into making a podcast episode. Let's record a little bit. We'll pretend that I'm making a new podcast episode on something exciting like the cafe scene in Port Macquarie, just for Prue. So I hit record. It asks which device I'm using. Yep, that's my headset. And I'll start recording. Hi, everybody. This week, we're going to be having a look at the amazing cafe scene in Port Macquarie and all the hip, cool cats that are down there from Charles Sturt this week. Obviously not in their offices. We're talking about you, Prue Gonzalez. And we hit stop. Okay, so it's made the audio. It's processing it. I can keep listening to it here if I like, or what I can do is I'm going to add it whilst it's processing across to my episode. This is where my episode details are collected over here. I don't just want that audio though. We'll just play it to make sure I've got the right thing. Hi everybody. This week we're going to be having a look at, okay, that sounds like me. Now, some other things that you may or may not like in your podcast once it goes up, probably transitions. And transitions refers to audio effects that you may want at the start of your episode. You notice that people have different sounds, etc., to kick off their podcasts. There are many, many of these. I'm not going to play them all. Gimmicky, perhaps. You can also upload your own audio files if you like. Oh yeah, that's us. All right, so we'll put that in. I want the episode to kick off with that sound. And at the moment, it's just got that short little audio grab of me talking, but you can create as many of those as you like and drag them all across. So you don't have to record it in one take, so to speak. You can record as many times as you like and drag each of those across to your episode until you're happy with it. Take them out, scrap them, add new ones in. You can add sounds in between different parts of your episode. We'll keep using that terminology. But I've just made a very short 17 seconds length audio. I can listen to it or preview it down the bottom here. At the amazing cafe scene in Port Macquarie. All right, so it's kicked in the preview where I was up to before, so that's okay. I'm now going to save my episode. What do I want to call it? Prue and Cafes, that sounds like it. Description, a bit of a blurb. This week we look at blah, blah, blah. You can put in hyperlinks in there if you like, but otherwise it's just basic text. You then get to also customize an icon or some artwork for your episode. You can put that in there, upload an image if you've got a specific image in mind. If you're creating a series of episodes, you might have seasons of content. You might have particular numbers. You don't have to populate this sort of metadata, but you certainly can. But I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to publish it. Okay, so my podcast is now live on the net. It tells me no one's listened to it yet. But up here on the right-hand side, I've got some important bits of information. One of them is a hyperlink. So I can drop that in the chat pod and all of you are able to listen to the audio directly from that link if you wanted to. So if you remember that subject site we looked at where they just provided a hyperlink, we've just done it. We created the audio, we got a link, we can drop it somewhere else. If I want this episode to be embedded in my subject site, it's really simple. On the right-hand side here, I've got an embed code. I can click once and it's copied that code. Let's jump into a subject site somewhere. Okay, I'm going to build a new bit of content. Just wait for I2 to catch up to the rest of the world. Item. Click into the content area. Now, you might not be familiar with the I2 content area editor, but if you are not, over on the right-hand side here, there's a button for putting in code. I'm going to click that. Brings up this box, and I'm going to Control V to paste that code that I've copied. Anchor FM, yeah, that sounds like it. Hit save. There's something there. That's what it's going to look like. And I submit that. And now, there it is down the bottom. Just wait for it to refresh. So now I've got an embedded media player directly within my content area. So that whole process took me less than 10 minutes. So it's pretty quick for you to create audio in Anchor and then get it into your subject sites. Really quick and simple. And the students, for example, can come along and hit play. Okay, so that's all it takes for you to have audio content that you create on the spot and embed it into I2. Yep, it embeds really nicely. Now, we haven't looked at the subscription aspect or any of that just yet. All we've looked at is how easy it is to create audio in the platform and get it into your subject sites. Can you download it as an MP3? That's a really good question. Let's go back to Anchor. You'll notice that there's nowhere in where the episode lives within Anchor that allows you to download the audio. That's the thing about podcasts. Once they're into the platform, they're really there for people to listen to through the media player. So if you're looking for the MP3 to be accessible, let's go back to the subject site for a second. Down on the right-hand side, we've got some options. One of them is to open the file if I wanted to share it, the link to other people. Again, no file to download for them. And the other one is to subscribe to the service, to Anchor. So none of them provide you with the opportunity to download the audio. And my assumption is that's to preserve your IP, to preserve your content. Of course, the reality for us is any content, video or audio, images, etc., that go into a website, if someone wants them bad enough, there are ways to very easily get that. But this service does not provide you with the option to download the audio itself. It's a really good question, Liz. Okay, and you might contrast it to the idea of adding your audio yourself into a subject site in Blackboard. Because we've uploaded the MP3, the very first thing it allows the students to do, for example, in turn, is to download that file themselves. So there's a real contrast between this embedded media player or the ability to download the file. Yeah, okay, so let's go back to Anchor for a second. We created a new episode, Prues in Cafes in this case. Some of the others, so I've put this into my channel, which is the same as we used for the Charles Sturt edX conference, and all the episodes that were added by different staff live on there. And you'll notice, apart from the length, we also get a summary of how often they've been played. So some of them were like Celia's one, for example, here, lots and lots of people playing it and listening to it. Gives you the dates they were listened to, the other options we get. From here, you've got the ability to download. So when you embed the media player, you can't download the file, but if you access the Anchor FM platform itself and look at the full catalog, you can get hold of each one. All right, so sorry for the slightly confusing answer before, Liz, but basically the embedded media in a subject site can't download. If you get into Anchor FM to the platform, along with getting looking at stats on the episodes, you're able to download them. Okay. All right. What I'd like to also show you, moving on, is the idea of subscription. At the moment, someone's coming here and looking and choosing the episodes and individually choosing which ones to listen to and download. But the other aspect of podcasts that we're looking at today is the idea of subscription services. So in Anchor, in the top right-hand corner, if we click on those settings, you'll see that there is an option here called distribution. So after you set up your Anchor account, which it will take, if you've got an email address, if you've got a Google account, if you've got I think a Yahoo account as well, but Google seems to be the main mechanism. If you haven't got a Google account already, I suggest you get a Gmail address, even just for teaching, because it will give you access to a bunch of these services, including Anchor. And you'll notice under distribution, the first thing it gives you is your RSS feed URL. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. I'm not really interested in using all these other platforms for distributing my tool if I was going through Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Spotify. And that's because this advanced section is all for paid services. If you want these platforms to advertise and distribute your podcast for you, you've got to pay them for it. There are ways for you to do that. So really, I'm not delving into this advanced section. I'm just looking at getting my RSS feed, which is the address for people to subscribe to my podcast. And I'm going to show you some platforms where we can use that. So the first one that I want to look at, probably I'm going to start with the simplest. Google Podcasts. Now, you may or may not be familiar with Google Podcasts. It's relatively new, only a couple of years old. For those of you who use other Google products like Google Drive, Google Docs, YouTube, etc., they're all owned by Google these days. Google also has a podcast platform now that you can find if you log into your google.com account. You can just type in Google Podcasts. It's the first result that comes up. And it is a very, very simple and easy to use interface that will allow you to subscribe to podcasts. That's all it does. It has a mobile app as well. So anything you put into your any service you subscribe to in the website on your computer, you'll also be able to pick up on your mobile. So what I'm going to do, I'll start here in the top left-hand corner and have a look at the menu. And you can see that apart from searching by topic, for example, over here and going through thousands and thousands and thousands of podcasts, underneath I can add by an RSS feed. So if I click on that, it wants the address that I copied before. I can paste that in, subscribe. And we're just waiting for that to finalize on Anchor, the one that we've just made. But that's where we subscribe to them through the menu. Wow, that threw a spanner in my works. It was supposed to work straight away. Okay, so we just have to wait for that episode to finish publishing. Okay, let's look at some other subscription-based services, just in case you were curious about searching for them. You search by topic in Google Podcasts. So perhaps if you're interested in technology or education or, I don't know, parks, search, it's going to find podcasts that have some of those key terms going on. So there's one of them, Tech in the Park, and I can now subscribe. It tells me that I've subscribed, so I can go and have a look now at my subscriptions. I just subscribed. Come on, give me a break. Maybe because I'm in the wrong account. Anyway, you can find podcasts, lots and lots of shows through Google Podcasts. I'm going to jump across to a platform that I know works. The second product I'm going to look at for capturing podcasts is called InoReader. And there's details on each of these, by the way, in the cheat sheet on podcasts that we were looking at. today. So if you're not capturing, I'm not doing a very good job of summarizing them right now, but you can certainly refer back to that cheat sheet document. InoReader is a very no-frills free service that allows you to subscribe to podcasts. And you can see that I've got a number of subscriptions already going on here. So if we have a look at the first one that I've got there, I want to have a look at all of them. Even if I've seen them, or why can't I see them? Let's have a look at this one in the sandpit. Okay. What I'm looking at the moment is actually content that I've created in i2 using CSU Replay. We're going to have a look at Panopto and CSU Replay in a second, because it also allows you to create either audio or video podcasts. So we used Anchor a minute ago to create audio podcasts that people could subscribe to, and that's fine. But we can also use CSU Replay to create audio or video podcasts that students can subscribe to. So if we look at a subject site like ADV 205, so we've got an advertising subject, the academic has in fact put all of the episodes that they put into CSU Replay, which are in fact videos, their PowerPoint slides being narrated, etc. All of them that appear in their CSU Replay folder have been subscribed to, and the student gets notified anytime there's new content added into those folders. So this might be an idea for you for getting your students to subscribe to your CSU Replay channel. And that way, whenever you add new content in there, they get an update and they can listen to it or watch it. And this is where that convenience aspect comes up. Maybe they're at the gym or on the bus or driving or whatever the case may be. Maybe driving is not an amazing example, but people do listen to podcasts when they're driving, so I think I'm safe. I'll click on one of them.
Hello, I'm Brett Van Heekeren and welcome to week 2 of ADV 205, Advertising Creative, and this week looking at idea generation.
Okay, so the academic in this case has created their episodes inside their subject site. They haven't done anything else. It's on the students to subscribe to the content they've created, and I'll show you exactly where that happens. For anything that's added to the CSU Replay folder for the subject, they would get updates on. So I'm not sure whether that would be a good idea or a bad idea, Jock. I suppose it depends on what you're adding. But what I would point out is that some of in CSU Replay, you'd be aware of the folder structure that's in there, the top levels and below. So let's have a look at a CSU Replay folder so I can give you some examples. Right, here's your Panopto folder, CSU Replay. We'll wait for it to load. And I've got a bunch of video that's been created inside Panopto. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see a subscribe button, an RSS button. And at that point, the student is able to actually click on that and they can choose how they want to subscribe to the service. Right, so if they use iTunes on their devices, they can subscribe that way. If they've got an RSS feed capture service, they can subscribe that way. If they only want to get audio and not video content, they can. This is by far the most popular generally. People are able to click on, again, either of those links, and it will marry up to whichever podcast capture service they use. Right, so they can subscribe to replay content. That is for this top level folder in CSU Replay. So hopefully that's making sense. If I make folders inside my CSU Replay folder, add another folder, and I'll say not for downloading as an example, not for subscribing. If I went into that folder and created new audio content, that will not appear in the podcast feed. It's only the top level folder. All right, so I'll just click on replay again to bring myself back. But that's how you differentiate between the stuff that you want for the students to get access to and the things that you potentially don't want to release to them. Okay, so let's create some audio in Panopto quickly just to demonstrate. If I hit create, I'm going to create using the Panopto player. However, if you already had audio on your computer, perhaps you'd recorded it through your mobile phone, for example, just the audio. You can upload that straight into your Panopto folder and people could subscribe to it. So you don't have to always do these things just the one way. There's usually a couple of ways to do it. I'm going to launch Panopto, open the player. The scenario here is I want to record some audio for my students. I don't want to use Anchor. I don't want to use any other products. I just want to create audio using the tool that's already in the subject site. Okay, we can do that once the computer decides to launch Panopto for us. It's a bit slow. Okay, here's our CSU Replay interface that you may or may not be familiar with. I'm going to turn off the webcam because I'm making audio. No webcam. No video, as long as it's capturing the right audio and I can see this green bar going up and down. Fantastic. I'm not going to have any secondary sources because this is not a screencast, it's not video, it's just audio. So all I have that's being captured currently is my audio. If I hit record now, and it's capturing. So welcome everybody to week 3. This week we're going to be looking at blah, 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 blah. I finish my audio, I hit stop. Okay, that's done. I'm going to hit done and go back to my subject site. What we're going to see here in a second, it will refresh. And that audio that I've created in Panopto has appeared in my CSU Replay folder. It's finishing processing. However, it's already available to be shared. Okay, so at that point, I've created audio using a different tool. And if the students have subscribed to the RSS, they'd be getting an email that says, Lachlan Kalache has published a new episode, and that episode title will be the heading up here of your Panopto file. So if you wanted to change that, you could certainly go into settings and change the name, give it something specific. Amazing episode number 5. Okay, so their email that they would receive would say there's a new episode published called this, and they could listen to it by clicking on the link in their emails. Okay, so that's the other way of getting audio content into your subject sites, is using the CSU Replay tool. Okay, if I was to take, I've already subscribed to my Sandpit. However, I'm going to grab that Anchor RSS feed again. And this time around, I'm going to try it one more time in InoReader, because we haven't looked at how to add podcast subscriptions using this tool. We've looked at some examples, but let's have a look at adding another subscription. There's a plus. I want to add a feed. It's the top item. And I'm pasting in my feed. That looks good. And it's found the feed that I was referring to. It's called Charles Sturt Stories. And here they all are. Every single episode through this reader. So if I haven't confused you yet, I'm not trying hard enough. So we've looked at 4 different platforms for getting hold of audio. I'm going to show you some more, but we've subscribed to someone's RSS feed. Right, so this is InoReader, and the reason I've showed it to you is because it's a free podcast subscription service, the same as Google Podcasts, but potentially, I actually find it a bit easier to use because it doesn't have all of Google's embedded sort of ads and images and pictures, and it's a bit, yeah, you get the text as well. The transcript is generated at the same time, so it's quite handy. I think the students, Kim, it's a really good question. What would we suggest the students use to subscribe? And I'm going to confuse you even further by suggesting a different product again, based on the fact that students will predominantly be using their mobile devices to subscribe to podcasts. And the most popular, one of the most popular mobile free services to subscribe to is called Pocket Casts. Okay, so what I'm going to do actually is share from my mobile phone Pocket Cast so you can see what it looks like. So let's assume that I can still do that. Share my screen, start that. Okay, so we're looking at, well, there's my daughter, but anyway, let's get into Pocket Cast. There it is. Okay, so this program is called Pocket Casts. It is a free podcast capture service. It's only available on mobile phone for free, but it allows you to subscribe to various podcasts. I've got a few there that I listen to. So Bunta Vista, for example, it has all the episodes listed, and you can listen to those whenever you like on your phone. So this is the way that a lot of people get hold of podcasts, through a mobile device. Potentially they're going to the gym and other places, and they will play the episodes from here. They'll also probably have a notification turned on, so they get an email when there's a new service. But Pocket Casts, which is what this app is called, is one of the most popular podcast capture services. It's not for creating the audio, it's just for subscribing to the services. You can get up to 150 services that you subscribe to. It has some minor customization there. If you want to change the layout for how things look, you can also sort by dates, etc. And you can search for new podcasts. Either if you have the RSS feed, you can paste it in here and it will subscribe to those new services, or you can search for them by those search terms like we did before. All right, so the reason I'm showing you Pocket Casts is because firstly, it's free. It's available from the App Store on Apple devices and Android devices. It is very, very simple to use. But the problem I have with it is it does not have a web, a cloud-based equivalent for people using a computer. If you want to use Pocket Casts on a computer, you've got to pay for it, and that's a problem. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. So have I overwhelmed you all just yet? I'll keep sharing. Let's go with that. Okay. So we had a look at Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, InoReader, Panopto, and Anchor FM. We've had a look at a bunch of different products used for either creating audio or for subscribing to podcast content. I'm going to hand over to Prue now to talk really at this point about some ideas for teaching. And I'm happy to, I'll take up position in the chat pod, Prue, and respond to things and stop talking for a bit.
Thanks, Lachlan. That's been a fantastic intro to the range of different types of podcasting tools we have there. And Kim does have a great question just around if students do install Pocket Cast, how do they then get your podcast?
You send an announcement out that gives them that RSS feed that we talked about before, and they will be able to paste that into Pocket Casts and subscribe. That's how they get it. You're going to need that RSS link. That's the money right there.
All right.
It's all about that. They can subscribe to your channel. Yeah.
It's all about the link. Excellent. No, thanks. Thank you, Lachlan. And I think something you've shown us when we quickly looked at some of the subject examples of how other people are using podcasts is it's not just for online students. It is also for face-to-face students. It's for students in sort of a mixed mode as well. And there's that opportunity to give them those weekly updates around what you'll be doing in your classroom or what you'd be expecting students to be doing that week within the subject. But you can also give concept lectures. And if you've taught a subject a number of times, you might know where students have hurdles or where there might be a stumbling block within a subject. And you can create those sort of short concepts podcasts around those different types of topics. It can just be short and quick, but that might be something that students can then go back to and revisit over and over if you know that's a particular stumbling block. Another great opportunity is to give that breakdown of an assessment. So you can really talk students through an assessment, particularly if it's building up to some of those larger assessments throughout the session. You can really provide some examples of and discussion around what you'd be expecting from students and what they might like to think about in the lead up to that process. So it's really, I mean, the list of ideas is quite endless. Feedback on assessments. So it doesn't have to be about video. It doesn't have to be just about spoken or word or written feedback. There is that ability to provide audio feedback and to give it as a podcast, some sort of cohort feedback to the whole group. Pros and cons, what they did well, what they could work on as a group, great examples and exemplars. All sorts of information as well. And that's a great point, Lachlan. So it's about feedback before and after. So is there information you'd like to give students in the lead up? Can you provide them some other types of information around their assessment? Lots of information around, lots of great ideas around the plan of attack for your weekly learning and materials. So you have that ability to say to students, this is your heads up. This is what you should be thinking about for this week and then heading into the following week. Are there different types of learning materials you'd like them to focus on? Would you like them to have a think about responses to readings? So, is there a way that we often ask students to read quite a lot, textbooks, chapters, journal articles. Can you also provide a summary or some sort of response to that in a verbal or an audio form? There's lots of different things we can do there. Student podcasts is another one. So is it always about the lecturer? Perhaps not. Students have the ability to also create podcasts. That's perhaps a topic for a different session, but we do have quite a few academic staff requiring students to create podcasts for assessments. So again, there's some great ideas about how that might work and what that could potentially look like. Lachlan, do you have any other comments around teaching ideas? We've seen a lot of people, talking at CSU edX around podcasts and how they're using them as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think for me, the appeal of podcasts to a lot of people, or even just audio creation, is the fact that it's less, I don't know about intrusive, but a lot of people get quite self-conscious when creating video-based content. There's that perhaps false expectation that everything that you create to provide to the students is going to have this highly polished professional look when you create it and present it to the students. And I'm not saying that professional content is bad, but also we have an opportunity to provide really authentic, engaging interaction with students, but also offline. So the stuff that we're recording, capturing your voice, your persona, and injecting that into your subject sites is really important. It's an opportunity to humanize what it can otherwise be a really isolating and impersonal experience. And I actually find that audio does that better than video at times, because people aren't sitting there watching and scrutinizing what's happening on the screen. They're just listening to your voice. And quite often in subjects, we hear from students that are doing a multitude of different things, all of those real world obligations that we know about. Their ability to tune in and listen to some audio while doing some of those things is potentially greater than putting aside time to sit down in front of a screen and sit there watching. So they're not mutually exclusive ideas. It isn't a, all video or all audio opportunity. But for me, the idea of being able to use my phone, for example, almost as a dictaphone, so old school ideas for capturing audio and then getting that back out to the students, either to enhance learning materials or just to show them that I'm tuned into what they're going through as well at the same time, is a great opportunity. And these tools and these platforms are just ways of getting that out, either embedded nicely within the subject site or putting them into a platform where they can tune into them when it suits them. So, that's, I like to try and tone things down a little bit with these tools. We're not talking really here about people becoming the next huge shock jock with professionally polished audio and lots of gimmicky sound effects. If you want to do that, absolutely fine. But really, this is to try and make people creating multimedia audio, particularly content as part of their teaching, that much more sort of achievable. Yeah, so that's my 4 cents in that case, Prue.
I think that you made some great points there, Lachlan, as well, just around the ability for creating something like this, a podcast. As you were saying, it can be a little bit quicker than a video. So you do have that ability to sort of give students a rapid response. If you've sort of taken the temperature in your classroom, there's something that students aren't sure about or are concerned about, you can create quite a quick audio response that also, if it's something that students are stressed about, an assignment, you can convey empathy through audio, you can convey caring, you can also provide a whole lot of informative information that they need for their assessment. So it's a nice quick way to get some, some quite meaningful information out, I think, to the students as well. So when it comes to tips and tricks, these are some pretty gold standard tips and tricks here. So pacing, have a listen to yourself. So do a couple of recordings first. Have a listen to yourself, listen back to see how fast you're going, how slow you might be going, whether or not you sort of think you might need to sort of pick up the pace or you might need to change your tone a little bit. Also have a think about some of the podcasts you like to listen to yourself. And, you can think about how you might be able to emulate parts of that or find your own voice within that space as well. What Lachlan was saying before is so important around authenticity and production. Students don't mind hearing us stumble over words occasionally, or if we don't quite get something right or we need to backtrack, that's all okay. It's all part of students becoming part of this conversation, which I think sort of podcasts have also almost become, being part of that conversation that's being had. Great points around not getting lost in transitions. It is a little bit, we looked at Anchor FM and they do offer a whole range of really great transitions. It's a little bit like PowerPoint transitions. You can get sucked in and fall down the rabbit hole of transitions. So try not to have too many transitions going on. But again, play around, have a listen back yourself and get some opinions to see what sounds great. The RSS link is what it's all about. So figure out where your RSS link is once you've created your podcast and make sure that you can share that with students appropriately. So in your I2 site, in your announcement, as Lachlan's got there, and figure out what students might be using or what platform they might be using, or even having a couple of suggestions for students on how they might like to access their podcast. We'll probably find that most students listen to podcasts and seem to have their favorite site that they go to as well. So I think there's lots and lots of great tips that we've got there. And I think it would be really great to hear back from people if you do start to use podcasts or you are currently using them. Let us know how you're using them and what sort of process you go through with sharing the information with students, what students think of them as well, and what some of the sort of tips and tricks you have. Oh, Jock's got some great points as well around the setup. Oh, this is excellent. Just around things like using headsets and microphones. So using your headset microphone or external mic is best practice. Excellent. Laptop or computer mics are sometimes quite good, but not always. And they're generally a little bit more lower, more hollow quality. Thank you, Jock.
Not to mention they're capturing a whole lot of other stuff going on behind you. So the things that we potentially have gotten used to, like the aircon in the background or the hum of, the quiet hum of the neighbor's mower going in the background or whatever the case may be. If you're not using a headset that doesn't have, a sound field that's being captured, sort of 15 to 20 centimeters in and around the headpiece, the likelihood of it catching things that you don't necessarily want in there or making it difficult for people to hear clearly is greater. And I would suggest, in my opinion, that a decent headset is one of the first things, certainly in the current climate where we're doing so much more online delivery and recording or creation of audio video resources. I think that you don't need to spend more than somewhere between $40 and $80 total on a decent quality headset unless you really want to get into that professional standard higher end. You can spend as much on these things as you want to, but basically you can get a decent Logitech headset for $35, $40. The ones I'm wearing, for example, are Sennheiser, which is generally a very reputable audio creation brand, and they were about $75, and I had to get Officeworks to order them in, but the quality of the audio through the headset, and it's also very, very light. You hardly feel it on your head. So that would be my recommendation, is to make sure you've got a decent headset as well, to help with not just your live Zoom meetings, but audio creation if you're using tools like Anchor and the others. Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Caroline. I might get you to expand on that a little bit. The only analytics we get through the platform, through Anchor, for example, if you create audio in Anchor FM, is to do with frequency. So if people are playing it, which country it picks up, where they're accessing it from, and which episodes are the most popular. We don't get any analytics from Anchor, for example, that are more specific. However, if you were to use CSU Replay to create your audio the way that I did before, we get access at that point to the statistics that people have in Panopto. So you may very much, you might be familiar with the stats option next to our CSU Replay videos. The same options are available for audio that goes in here, which means that we can tell in a subject site which students have been listening to which audio and for how long. So if you've used that stats option in CSU Replay before, this is not much good because it's not a subject site, but that option is there. So if the statistics is important to you, then have a closer look at creating content in your subject CSU Replay folder, because that will actually allow you to identify who's listening to what and when. All right, I think we've hit time just about, Prue, and I can see people have got other things to jump to. So as always, we'll hang around for sort of 5 minutes, etc., and chat to people. But you've got slides, and thank you all for coming to another one of our sessions. Have a great week.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks, Lachlan. I'm going to go and listen to a podcast about cafes in Port Macquarie. Should be good.
From a cafe in Port Macquarie.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing and stop recording and have a look at what I've missed.